Hi, my name's Joe Murphy, and you're listening to Cigar and Whiskey with Yannick Theriault.
Hey folks, it's Nick from TDC Moncton and Cigar and Whiskey, and I've got with me one of the grand gentlemen of blues in the Maritimes. No, it's not Dutch Mason, he was our Prime Minister, but he's darn near close to that right now. His name is Joe, and you all know him as a familiar face from my father's Mustache out of Halifax. 25 years plus now. And that's part of the album that he released less than a year ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, how long have you been actually playing the blues? Because you've been immersed in it for so long.
1971.
1971.
Came back from California, and some of my friends said that they liked the way I played harmonica, and would I go and try to play with Dutch one night. I went there and played with Dutch, and he ruined my life.
Dutch had that effect on many people. Teresa Malafa was another one of them. Now, the instruments that you use are harmonica. I know you play the Cajun accordion as well. And you also play guitar. You sing, of course.
I play mandolin too sometimes.
And you play mandolin?
Mandolin is on the new record.
Okay. Now the Water Street Blues Band is usually the usual the regulars that sit down and play with you during the period of time. Could you name them for our audience?
Sure. Well, for most years, like the last bunch of years, it was John Iman on guitar, and Gary Potts on drums, and Greg Fish Fancy on bass, and Little Barry was playing keyboards up until the last couple of years. And I guess that's the regular band. When I was doing the last record, as a producer, I started thinking about some changes in personnel, I guess. And I became really infatuated with the Hammond organ. And I met this young guy, Leith Fleming Smith. And Leith Fleming Smith started becoming the regular keyboard player. And recently, there's a young guy, John Main, who is a great young blues piano player. But, you know, I think it was after the Testifying record that I started thinking about doing a few changes. But also the thing is, like Fish's wife passed away, and Fish is not playing with me now. Fish is starting to play again, and my guitar player, my regular guitar player, his wife is not well. You know, we're all getting up there in years, and like, you know, there's some, you know, pressures of relationships and health issues. And but the other thing too is that I like right now, you know, I'm just as likely to have Curtis Matheson playing guitar with me, and John Main's going, but the rhythm section is steady right now. But you know, Brad Conrad is another guy from the Mellotones I play with a lot, and you know, it's floating a little bit just because of the circumstances. But I mean, I'd like to record with some different musicians too. So, you know, so things are changing a little bit like that.
Well, your charisma is beyond the norm of regular Joe. I mean, every time that you go to any blues venues, you tend to literally befriend other musicians that actually get to know you more, and then you sit down and have fun with your instruments, playing, doing a jam session of sorts. I know that you've traveled a lot as well. Most of your gigs have been in the Maritimes, but you've traveled outside of the Maritimes.
Well, recently I've been playing with a guy from Mississippi named Chris Gill. I've been trying to get him up here, and I met, you know, I was doing the when I play in Ontario, usually the guys from Downchild Blues Band back me up. It's basically the core of Downchild Blues Band, and a couple of times I've gone up there and played with a bunch of other musicians from Toronto that had expressed an interest in playing with me. And but the guys in Downchild are really my friends. I really should be doing some recordings with some of those guys. But there was a Mississippi stage. This is at the Southside Shuffle that Chuck Jackson puts on. This is like 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And I asked if I could sit in at the Mississippi stage, and they received me very well, and I started becoming friends with some people, most notably this guy Chris Gill from Jackson, Mississippi. And he was playing, it was what was it called? D. Mar and Gill. Derek Martin was the drummer, and Derek Martin was the drummer with Little Richard. Little Richard, up until recently, was still playing in Macon, Georgia. And I don't know if Little Richard is in a wheelchair now, but at the time of this interview, I think he's still alive. But Derek Martin is playing with some really good blues bands out on the West Coast. But Chris Gill is my buddy. He was playing down in Jackson, and you know, he had said to me, you know, why don't I go down and just play with them in Mississippi? But even before that, what we were playing, when we were playing at the Southside Shuffle, I didn't know they were recording. The next thing I knew, I was on the record. Well, this record that they did live from the Southside Shuffle. But you know, so I've been down to Mississippi a few times, and got to play at the Hal and Mal's on Monday night, which is Central Mississippi Blues Society. A fantastic jam session. And you know, I got a chance to play at Red's in Clarksdale, and I spent an afternoon at the Blue Front Cafe in Bentonia, where there's the home of Skip James. And last time I was in Memphis, I got a chance to play with Blind Mississippi Morris. But you know, not dropping names, it's just like, you know, very, very, very lucky to, you know, at this stage, still meet people and get a chance to play with people who are really great. Like Blind Mississippi Morris, years ago when Slick Ballinger came up here to the Fredericton, the Harvest Festival, Mississippi Morris couldn't get across the border for some reason, and but I was playing with Johnny Sansone at the time, and that the Homemade Jams band was up here, and the father, Mr. Perry, Johnny wanted me to lend Mr. Perry my amplifier because I had a really good harp amp, and I offered it to Mr. Perry, and he said, no, I feel more comfortable using my amp. And I told him, he said he liked my harp playing. I said, I really like your harp playing. And I said, you remind me of Blind Mississippi Morris. And his jaw dropped, you know, and he said, geez, you got a good ear. He said, that's my teacher, Mississippi Morris, you know. So last year, 2 years ago, I got a chance to actually play with him in Mississippi, or in Memphis actually. But yeah, the whole thing is, that's one of the joys of my life, to go and play with good musicians, and even the musicians that are just coming up. Play with people that love the music that I play. You know, that's what better experience in life.
Now I know today was a busy day because you were up at 7 a.m. You were one of the chosen musicians for the Blues in Schools program that they have during the Harvest Festival. From what we were talking, it was an enjoyable experience. The kids received you quite well.
Yeah, it was good. I didn't think I did as good with the high school kids today. I was maybe getting too tired. But yeah, I mean, I used to do Blues in Schools program back in Halifax, and I prefer to do it with much smaller numbers of people. I like it when it's much more intimate. It's a little daunting in a full auditorium. And also the thing is, you've seen me play a few times. I kind of really like to read my audience, but it's hard to get a take on a whole high school full of people in a theater, and you're not really sure how they're receiving you. But you know, it was good. With the little kids today at Harvey, it was spectacular because I just had a little incident where I got this kid to come up and help me play the guitar, and it worked out really good. But I mean, like, you know, little children. God, you know, I have 4 grandkids myself now, so.
See, he's not only just a bluesman, but he's also
a human being?
A human. Well, that's putting it mildly. You're more than a human being. You're the father of the blues for many people that have known circles that exist in the Maritime.
I'm getting old, that's what it is.
Well, I mean, the age unfortunately affects everyone, and the only sure thing in life, as they like to say, is death and taxes.
Yeah, it's all good.
Now, you've released, in total, if I remember correctly, you released, including the 25 years at the Mustache, 4 albums, right?
No, it's more than that. There's Mustache, 25 years of the Mustache. Before that's Testifying. And then before that is maybe some rough stuff with Johnny Sands. Oh no, the next one before that is She Moves Me with Bareth Rajakumar. And then some rough stuff with Johnny Sansone. And then Live at Your Father's Mustache. And the first one was Hate to See You Go. I've done a few projects with playing more guitar than harp with really great harp players. I really like to play guitar behind a harp player. And I really like a guitar player who likes to play behind me. But I'm a huge fan of Little Walter and Sonny Boy. And my favorite guitar playing in many ways is that backing harmonica playing that was so much a part of chess and trumpet and southern, like there's so many of the great California players who are so good, like Bareth, my buddy Bareth Rajakumar, who I think is the greatest harmonica player in blues right now for my money. I mean, there are a lot of guys that are really, really good, but Bareth plays the traditional blues.
Yeah, he does.
So good. And, I love playing guitar with him. And my buddy Shrimp Daddy, last year we won the right to go to Memphis, but we couldn't get across the border because one of our guys couldn't get across the border, so we're disqualified. It was, I don't know, it was 2 years ago or whatever, I can't remember. But, yeah, I mean, I was playing guitar in Shrimp's band, I was one of the guitar players in Shrimp's band, so I love to play with other musicians in different contexts, but playing behind a good harp player to me is as much fun playing harp. I love it.
Well, folks, you heard it from the man himself. Joe, thank you very much for giving us some of your time today.
Oh, and I got to say,
yes,
if you say one, that John Main is playing with me.
Yes.
This young fellow, Curtis Matheson from Glace Bay, I just played on his album. And he's really someone, you heard him play the other night.
Yes.
He's a marvelously talented young musician. And these young guys coming up, I just kind of wish that Dutchie was around so they could play with him once or twice and he could hear them. Would put a smile on his face. Miss you, Dutch. Let's finish with that.
Curtis Matheson from Glace Bay on the guitar. The only original member of the Water Street Blues Band, Mr. Morris Scott Brown on the bass. Gary Claps back there on the drums. A little thing here.